Coming up on today's show, VW's return to electric motor racing at Pikes Peak, and 13,000 people this weekend gather at the Renewable Energy Fair featuring plenty of EVs. Well, hello and welcome to the Saturday the 16th of June edition of EV News Daily. It's Martyn Lee here, and with all the news you need to know about electric cars and the move towards sustainable transport, we'll start with some news about the Tesla Model 3. And it's time to check out a Teslarati report, and user on Twitter, Michael 7 Striker is what he calls himself on Twitter. He says this: Tesla Model 3 on the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah. One of the most awesome experiences I've had in my Trinity. Hashtag Tesla, hashtag Model 3, at Tesla, at Elon Musk, at Model 3 owners. Well, Model 3's batteries were not even fully charged when this particular Model 3 owner took his Model 3 onto the Salt Flats of Bonneville, did a high-speed run, and the vehicle was running on its entirely stock 18-inch Aero Wheels, according to Teslarati. And according to Striker himself, he opted to pull back on the throttle when he reached 90 miles an hour. While the Model 3 performance, or the P3D, as it's becoming increasingly common to call it, according to Elon Musk, is going to be 15% faster than the BMW M3 on the track, with a 0 to 60 time of 3.5 seconds, top speed 155 miles an hour, and Tesla expects to start making that Model 3, the Performance Edition, next month in July. Could be 15 days away. The 1st of July could be the end of the month, but we know that we're close to it. And what's interesting about the chemistry of the Model 3 cells and the packs they're making is Elon talking a lot about how you can take your car to a track day and it won't show any kind of degradation. And what I would love to hear more about this particular Model 3 owner, if he's up for doing more high-speed runs and things like that, if he doesn't mind doing it with his car for the sake of our entertainment. I'd love to know how many runs he can do, and is there any deg on the performance? Because we know, whilst it's fun to engage ludicrous mode on a Tesla, it doesn't like to do it too many times. And there's a bit of preconditioning for the batteries and things like that. So if they're building the Model 3 performance especially to be one that can just do lap after lap after that and keep that performance going, that would be fascinating to see. But thank you so much to this particular owner, Michael Striker, for our benefit, taking his Model 3 out onto the Salt Flats and just hitting 90 and saying what a fun experience that was. Well, talking about high speeds and a car that'll go even faster than that is the VW IDR, the Pikes Peak racer, and in the wee hours of the morning, according to The Drive, they were present for Volkswagen's on-site test of its electric Pikes Peak prototype race car. Now, Romain Dumas is the 3-time Pikes Peak winner, and he's been chosen to drive this car, the pure electric 680 brake horsepower insane prototype designed by VW engineers. Well, The Drive reports that despite starting phase 2 of the day's testing earlier this week on the upper half of the mountain without even a full charge, Dumas maintained momentum through his first run on the upper half of the course, grappling with regen braking all the way. Videos online on the Drive website, and it is very quick, very impressive, and the sound it makes, I love that electric motor sound. Looking forward to seeing the actual real run at Pikes Peak. Well, hello to you if you're heading along to a big renewable energy fair this weekend. 13,000 people expected to attend the Midwest Renewable Energy Fair in Custer this weekend. It's on today and tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday. The MREA Executive Director, Nick Hiller, said, I quote, "This is probably one of the most exciting things that's happened during my tenure here. The incredible growth of electric transportation and options that are out there. We'll have every variety of electric vehicle here on display, more than 100 vehicles," end quote. And of course, that comes just a week after here in the UK having the Fully Charged Live event by the Robert Llewellyn and the Fully Charged team. Had all of the EVs there on show as well. So just a week later, this time 13,000 people going to find out more about solar and storage and renewable energy, and of course to see over 100 different types of electrified vehicle hybrids. Of course, I imagine will be there as well. Well, from cars to trucks, and Trucks.com reports that the shipping giant UPS said it's going to buy 950 electric delivery trucks from Workhorse in what looks to be a key order for the startup. According to Trucks.com, it tops an earlier UPS order, an initial order of 50 of the trucks as part of a test program. Well, Workhorse describes the vehicles as Class 5 NGen electric vehicles. UPS and Workhorse actually collaborated together on the design, and with a 60 kilowatt-hour kilowatt-hour battery pack. Not the biggest pack for a truck, but the N-Gen vans can travel up to 100 miles before they need to be recharged. The cost to do that, about $6 for 100 miles. Now, that is so much lower than if you're running on gas or, more commonly, diesel-powered trucks. The all-electric delivery vehicles are going to cost about the same as conventional trucks, which is incredible, because normally you've got that big capex outlay at the beginning. However, they're going to have far lower operational cost over the extended life, and they're less to maintain, of course, for your moving parts. UPS would save about $170,000 per van. That's a huge $170,000 per van, compared with a similar diesel delivery truck over the 20-year expected lifespan. Well, occasionally newspapers, or those who have a vested interest to talk down electric vehicles, will put a story out there and say that we are facing meltdown the very moment one of us plugs in an EV and tries to make a coffee at the same time. But not only are most grid operators saying it's not an issue, the grid can cope, your house can cope. A new report now says that they have a vested interest in making it work as power shifts from fueling your transport on oil forecourts to fueling your transport by the power companies. So there's all these oil companies that have these gas stations and forecourts, hundreds of thousands around the world, facing a future where they don't get the revenue for travel, but the power companies do. So, of course, the power companies are the ones saying, it's going to be fine, we'll make it work. It's in their vested interest because tens of billions, it says here, of revenue are at stake. Now, the report also recommended that in order to meet the rising demand of charging stations, governments have to facilitate a standard charging infrastructure and advanced charging technology. Where do you stand on that? I'm totally undecided. I see really heated debate online from people saying it's ridiculous that there's more than one type of plug. Here we go, VHS and Betamax again. It's HD, DVD and Blu-ray all over again. Do we really have to have two? Well, yep, I mean, there's Apple and Android. I mean, there's different operating systems. Why can't you have CCS charging and why can't you have CHAdeMO charging? Tesla are always going to have their own charging for their own type of plug. I don't see them ever falling in line with everybody else. And of course, China has their own as well. So maybe they'll just be, over time, submerging. Maybe a couple of them will come together. Maybe we'll end up with 2 or 3 or 4. It's like mobile or cell phone networks. You don't have to have one of those, you know. You can have more than one. And there's enough transmitters and network receivers around for us all to have different networks on our phones. Where do you stand on it? Let me know in the comments, either on YouTube or the blog, or you can email or use Twitter as well. Search EV News Daily. Well, the boss of Mini says it's one of the hardest brands to switch to EV power because of its small size to the Mini cars. His name is Peter Schwarzenbauer, and he said this, and I quote, "Electrifying Mini is quite a challenge, chiefly because of the small footprint of the cars. But if you look at the role of electrification in the urban environment and the desire to be local emissions free, there's no other brand with the credentials of Mini, and it should be a natural fit. That's the direction we're moving towards the future," he says. "The success of the plug-in hybrid Countryman shows what can be achieved, and the full electric Mini that's coming will show another step," end quote. Well, that full electric Mini, by the way, is coming in 2019, will be made partly here in the UK in somewhere called Oxford, and partly in China as well for that market. And of course, if you make the cars and sell them there, that helps go towards your Chinese credits of making new energy vehicles. Well, the BMW Group, according to Autocar, is known to be working on solid-state batteries in partnership with Toyota, with a date of around 2025 to get them in the cars. Both smaller and more powerful than today's batteries, they could pave the way for getting some long ranges in very small cars like the Minis. Well, talking of Autocar, by the way, I think it was the Autocar review of the Jaguar I-Pace, with brilliant review, by the way, and really considered super good points in there. They also brought up the point, which I see flying around occasionally, which is we shouldn't have tried to electrify from the bottom end of the market upwards, with Minis, with Nissan Leafs, with Renault Zoes, but instead the reviewer said actually maybe for the first few years it should have only been Tesla Model S's and X's and then Porsches and Audis and Jaguars, and it'll go down if you're like, well, don't start at the bottom. Well, that's kind of an interesting point. Where do you stand on that? Well, whilst some car makers who are catching up, frankly, if I'm being honest, let's be frank, they're catching up with others. They have to get their batteries from a variety of places in some cases, well, wherever they can. Tesla get all their battery packs from Panasonic, and that is not going to be changing. for a long while yet. Well, Tesla's target to produce 5,000 Model 3s a week by the end of June looks like it's going to be on course. 2 weeks to go. I wonder whether that's going to be they take the peak daily rate they've ever achieved in June and multiply it by 7, or whether really the last week of June will be 5,000 cars. Well, Tesla's chief exec Elon Musk recently said to analysts on the first quarter results call, we think we can get the cobalt to almost nothing in the Panasonic batteries. Now, Tesla batteries use NCA, or, I mean, you probably know this already if you're a Tesla fan, lithium, and then nickel, cobalt, aluminium, which is the NCA. Other manufacturers, and that's, by the way, in the Tesla cars, I think they don't use that in the stationary Tesla storage products. Somebody who knows way more than I do will correct me if I'm wrong about that. I think in them they use the NCM cell technology. I think, anyway, the cells that you get in power packs and power walls is slightly different to what the chemistry in the cars, but correct me if I'm wrong. Other manufacturers use the NCM compound as well, which is the lithium, but then with nickel, cobalt, manganese, which is what you get, for instance, in the pouch cells in the new Jaguar I-Pace that we were talking about a moment ago. Worries about cobalt shortages have prompted many to seek to alter the composition of the cathode part of the NCM battery to 8 parts nickel, 1 part cobalt, and 1 part manganese. Panasonic saying we're on target to almost get rid of that completely, whilst tripling production. And that's not a surprise, because Elon's got some big numbers in mind. Talk about 10,000 cars per week is the next target once they hit 5,000, and that's going to need, well, a lot more batteries. I could just say double the amount of batteries, but I don't know how many they're making at the moment. Well, Electrify America is back in the news. As part of the settlement for Dieselgate, VW had to set up Electrify America to build out a charging infrastructure and increase the adoption of EVs. And now we've just heard details of how investment in Sacramento, California, will bring a series of initiatives to the city. $44 million is going to be spent on Sacramento's Green City Plan. The first part of the plan is 2 new car-sharing schemes. And of course, all the cars used will be zero emission. By March 2019 at the latest, you'll be able to use Gig. Now, Gig is an EV sharing scheme where you haven't got to return the car to the place you hired it from, but rather any designated parking space as long as it's inside a 13 square mile area where they operate. Now, you will be billed according to time or distance travelled. Now, CNET explains the other car-sharing service is called Envoy, and it's a round-trip car-sharing service, a bit like Zipcar, where you book and pick up and return the car to exactly the same spot, much more like the car-sharing schemes I'm used to here in London. Now, Envoy will feature a fleet of 142 vehicles, according to CNET, across 71 locations, each vehicle having a dedicated Level 2 charger to itself. Electrify America also investing in 12 new electric buses to run from the University of California. But what about EV charging for the likes of you and I? Well, there are plans to build out the region's EV charging infrastructure by adding 10 quick chargers. They're the ones that will charge from 50 to 150 to 350 kilowatts. CNET saying that it charges at a rate of 350 kilowatt hours. And that's fascinating, because CNET is a really good website, and it's written by really technical people, and they still mix up kilowatts and kilowatt hours. So what chances do people have when they just walk into a dealership and say, tell me about electric cars? Anyway, that's my gripe at the moment, is people not being enough education around. These charging stations are going to be open to the public as part of the funding used to build them, and also go to the charging infrastructure for both of the upcoming car sharing schemes and the bus service as well. A brilliant thing happened today, by the way, heading into the community part of the show now. We were talking a couple of days ago about one of the podcast listeners who I follow on Twitter, talking about leaving his Kia Soul EV, actually, and he's leaving it for a couple of weeks, didn't know what rate of, what state of charge to leave the batteries, and we had a few brilliant replies to that as well. And then we got this one on YouTube, which is, hi Martyn, on the topic of leaving a Soul EV for a long period unused, we leave ours at 50%, but The Soul has a party trick. There's a fuse panel down by the driver's right knee, and that has an on-off switch inside it. It powers off the car and means you don't have to drain the 12-volt battery. In the handbook, it's in there as well, and we have used it, he says, whilst away for 6 weeks holiday twice. Great show as always. Thank you so much. No, thank you, because I then passed that feedback on to the other gentleman who was leaving his car, and he replied back straight away, thank you so much, great advice. You'll check out the Soul's handbook. Of course, we always love the comments online on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, and you can email. The email address to get straight to me is hello@evnewsdaily.com. That is hello@evnewsdaily.com. In the meantime, if you fancied sharing the podcast with the people in your groups, that would be great. All the old ones as well are on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio podcasts, and the blog at evnewsdaily.com. If you want to subscribe, you can get them first and free and automatically. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'll catch you tomorrow.